Thank you, Roxy. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate everyone joining today. As you can see, our topic is going to be multiple offers, bring them on. I know that lots of you are getting multiple offer situations, and so many of the questions are how do we handle those? So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So how do you handle a multiple offer? Well, there's lots of examples. For example, there are rules to follow, and we're going to look at our code of ethics and our rules and regulations. We're also going to talk about it at the listing appointment. We will also talk about it at the buyer appointment, as well as during offer presentations. And I also want to talk a little bit about peer etiquette when delivering information and or making decisions. So I hope that this will be informative for you. So let's get started. First of all, what does the Code of Ethics say about handling multiple offers? Well, Article 1 says that realtors will submit offers and counteroffers objectively and as quickly as possible. Now, our Texas real estate licensing also says that you will present all offers to the seller in a timely manner. Practice 1.7 says when you're acting as a listing broker, that you will continue to submit all offers and counteroffers until closing or unless the seller or landlord says stop. At that point, then you no longer have to present them. I see that we have some issues with the screen, so I want to make sure that everyone is seeing the screen. So I apologize.
There is a question here, Lori, about will we get notes after the webinar? All of you will be emailed the presentation after the webinar.
Great.
Okay, now we're starting.
Okay,
everybody's
great.
Saying they can see it fine, so we're good.
All right. Sorry about that. Just a little technical difficulty there. Wonderful. Thank you guys for letting me know. I appreciate it. All right. Again, going right along with the Code of Ethics. We also have Article 3. Oh, I'm sorry, Article 1 still. 115 says that in response to all inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers, that the listing broker shall, with the seller's approval, disclose the existence of offers on the property. And when disclosed, the realtor can also ask if those offers were made by either the listing firm or a cooperating broker. Now, with that being said, let's look at Article 3. Article 3 talks about variable rate or dual rate. Now, if you're acting as a listing broker and you have agreed to use what they call a variable rate, which means that basically what you're going to do is offer a less than commission rate because you're selling it in-house or you're selling it yourself, then you must disclose that. By doing that, you're going to disclose that in the multiple listing service records. So when you actually pull up an MLS sheet, it's going to say variable rate, yes or no. Now, why is that important? The goal is to make it a level playing field for all parties involved. So if you are going to do that, you must disclose that. And the listing broker not only has to disclose it, but they also have to disclose, if asked, what the variance is going to be. So how much percentage different? Now, why do you think that's important? Well, because of the fact that you have to disclose the existence of accepted offers, including any unresolved contingencies as well. Again, the key is to make the playing field level, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Disclosing unresolved contingencies is usually really important during short sales. I know some of you guys are still doing short sales, so if you have a short sale, we always have that bank contingency, the financing contingency, whatever it might be, you do need to disclose. I do have an offer working, however, there is a hump that we need to get over. So just to let you know.
Lori, we have a couple of questions. One of them is, what if the variable rate is offered if the listing agent brings the buyer, but not if another agent from the listing broker brings the buyer? Does that require disclosure as a variable rate agreement?
Great question, and the answer is yes, because you never know what situation you're going to bring the buyer from. So the variable rate does need to be disclosed before any offers are submitted. In that case, in that event, then you would know that if someone is bringing it from their own office, that there is going to be a differential, and you have to discuss that with your buyer. So the answer is yes, you would disclose that whether it's brought from another office or your own.
And Lori, we have one more question. I think you're going to get to this later, but we'll go ahead and ask it. It's how do you suggest dealing with appraisals and the possibility that they come in lower than the agreed upon price?
That's a great question, and I am going to deal with that later. So I'm going to park your question, but I am going to answer that in just a minute.
And let's get one more here. So we are required, if there are offers working before the seller starts to say multiple.
That's correct. That's correct. So if you are going to do a variable rate, okay, if you're going to do a variable rate, what is a variable rate? I'm going to refresh everyone's memory.
Yeah, we have another one exactly. And while you're doing
what is a variable
while
rate?
You're doing that, you may want to let them know where it is in MLS. That is the other question that's here.
Not a problem. So variable rate is where you as the listing agent or listing broker have made a commitment to the seller should you sell it in-house. Okay, should someone in your own brokerage house sell it, then you are going to do a less than normal commission. Okay, in that event, everybody needs to know, because you have to make the playing field level. So that means if I'm coming from another brokerage, I need to know that, because I have to craft my offer to make sure that I either pad it with that extra percentage, or I let my buyer know, all things being equal, chances are they will take the other offer because it's going to net the seller more than it would otherwise. So it needs to be disclosed up front before any offers are made. So you would do that kind of at the listing appointment. So you would discuss that with the seller. Now, that being said, another thing too is when you look at the MLS sheet, there's a place that says variable rate, yes or no. So you would need to check that when you're putting it into the MLS system. You would also, as a buyer's agent, need to look at that before you make an offer, and then contact the listing agent. If there are other offers, that would be the time for you guys to go, hey, do you have an offer? You do. Or is it within your house? Is it an in-house offer, or is it from a cooperating broker? If it's in-house, then you need to let your buyer know and pad that figure.
Lori, we have one more question. I think there's still I know we need to move on, but I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty as to how this works. It says, does this mean the listing agent will not take a buyer in-house? And I guess we need to clarify that they will take that buyer, except they're going to take it at a less commission if it's in-house.
Exactly. What you're basically saying, and we can't talk commission, so I can't talk numbers, but what you're basically saying is this. You're saying that, Mr. Seller, I'm gonna charge X, but if we sell it in-house, I'm gonna charge half X, for example. So yes, you would take a buyer into the house, but understand that you might be charging half X to take that buyer. So again, it's not a matter of whether or not you would not take the buyer. It's simply a matter that you need to disclose if you're going to do something other than what is normally done.
And Lori, we have one more question on this. They are actually putting percentages in this question, so I will not say those numbers.
Okay.
But it says...
and the answer to your question is yes, that is correct. That's correct. So you have a less than if it's within the team, and a more than if it's represented by another broker. That's correct. And you must disclose that. That is our code of ethics. You must disclose if you're going to practice that.
And we are moving. There's another question here that you're probably going to table till you get into that, and then we'll move on to the next section. But it says the requirement to disclose multiple offers is contingent on the seller's permission. Is this permission already obtained in the TAR listing agreement and the TAR management agreement?
Wow, these are all great questions, y'all. I appreciate it. And yes, I am going to get to these questions as well. So that question I'm going to table because yes, it is on the TAR forms, and we're going to show you a copy of the forms as well.
Okay, so let's move on so we can get through this then.
All right. So ready? Here's the listing appointment. So you're going to talk to the seller about this at the listing appointment, multiple offers. Now, who's your fiduciary to? It is to the seller. So first of all, you have a fiduciary to the seller. Your goal is to market the property, procure a buyer, and negotiate the sale. Okay? Then, in addition, the broker may, and on page 6 of the TAR listing agreement, if you use the TAR listing agreement, paragraph 11, number 8, let's look at that. So right here we have the broker's authority, and in D8, it says, in response to inquiries from prospective buyers and other brokers, disclose whether the seller is considering more than one offer. It says the broker will not disclose the terms of any competing offers unless specifically instructed by the seller. Okay, so this is a good place to find out how you want to handle multiple offers. Will you disclose them? And does the seller want you to disclose the terms? Now, that being said, there is a form for that. There is a seller authorization to release and advertise certain information, and that's a TAR 1412. So this is a great form to disclose anything the seller is giving you permission to say, do, or advertise. In addition, should the seller instruct you to stop bringing offers, you're going to need to get that in writing as well. And hopefully your brokerage will have that. Unfortunately, TAR does not have a form for that yet, but you would need to get that in writing. Now, at the buyer appointment, you would need to disclose the opportunity for multiple offers in the buyer appointment as well. Who's your fiduciary duty to there? It's to the buyer. And so your goal with the buyer, of course, is to get a property, negotiate the acquisition, and comply with the provisions of the agreement. Look at page 1 of your buyer rep number 5. That's exactly what it says. Now, in addition, you need to explain that there could be competing clients as well as offers, multiple offers. So let's look at that in the buyer-tenant representation form. If you'll notice on page 2, number 9, it talks about competing clients. And this sets up the expectation to let them know, I work with a lot of clients. I love you guys, but I work with a lot of clients. Consequently, it could be that someone who has the same criteria as you, I am also working with several other families who have the same criteria as you, looking in the same places. So it could be that I'm showing your dream home to several buyers. Okay, you're disclosing that to them. At the same time, down here in the confidential information, it says unless otherwise agreed or required by law, a seller or the seller's agent is not obliged to keep the existence of an offer or its terms confidential. If a listing agent receives multiple offers, the listing agent is obliged to treat the competing buyers fairly.
And Lori, we have a question that ties in with that kind of here. It says, is it okay if the seller agrees to tell people what the offers are for? Like, I've received an offer for X as the highest and best so far.
Yes, as long as you have that in writing. And I would use that form that we just looked at to go ahead and say, it's okay for me to tell you this. And so that is that TAR, I believe it's 1914. You would need to go ahead and have the seller sign that so that that covers you, so that you're not breaking your confidentiality agreement.
And the next question is, what does this mean? Does it mean the seller can cancel an accepted offer and take a new offer?
No. No. Once you have accepted an offer, it is accepted, period. So you can only take new offers as backups. So I'm going to go over that as well. So hang in there with me. I'm going to answer your questions, hopefully, as we progress along.
And next it asks, did you say TAR 1914? Is that the correct?
Yes, I believe it's a TAR 1914. That's correct. All right. So again, variable fees, remember you must disclose those. In the MLS, when another broker or agent inquires about it, you have to tell the range of difference. The goal is to keep the playing field level for all. Our goal is to treat all parties fairly. If you're acting as a buyer's agent, it's your obligation to counsel your client and let them know what variable fee means and what this is going to mean to them when crafting an offer. They need to understand that all things being equal, because of the variable fee, your offer might be in a less than position. So that's discussion that you need to have with your client. Again, you're going to need to share that info and create a pricing strategy for your client so that their offer will look better. Now, here's the question that many of you guys have asked. What about appraisals? What if the appraisal comes in low? What's going to happen? Now, you have to understand, no matter what offer you make, the house must appraise. At some point in time, it has to appraise. So here's the deal. You have to counsel your client. Again, let your client know. Listing agents, if it comes in lower than, what's going to happen? You're going to have to counsel your seller and tell them, if it comes in low, we're going to have to either walk on this one and let it go, or we're going to have to drop the price or figure something out, okay? Buyer's agents, you're going to have to do the market analysis. You're going to have to let them know, look, you're bidding more than what the list price is. If it doesn't appraise, then the seller may come down, they may not. We may have to find another house, or you may have to pull it out of your pocket and pay the difference. So again, the house must appraise. So we need to make sure, as we are overbidding these properties, that there is going to be some form of level opportunity. So again, the house must appraise. Now, what about when you present offers to the seller? I know that there is a misconception in presentations. So I want you to understand, number one, you present all offers to the seller. Number two, there is no first in, first presented. I know that there is some misconception about that. It's like, I put mine in today and you put yours in yesterday. Why are we being shown these two offers at the same time? Because the seller has the right to look at all offers presented. So it is not a first in, first presented situation. If you, the listing agent, cannot get with your seller until a particular time, you need to let the agents know that. Thank you for your offer. My seller is not available until Friday afternoon, and I'll be meeting with him at 5 o'clock. You need to let them know that, and then let everybody know that. So let all of them know, treat everybody fairly, and let them all know in the same way. And when you present the offers to the seller, if you don't know how to present multiple offers, here's an idea that I think will help.
I've got a question for you real quick. As a buyer's agent, how can we be sure that the listing agent presented our offer?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, sadly, there are a lot of issues where people feel like their offers have not been presented. They feel maybe they've been not treated so fairly. Now, I will tell you this. Our code of ethics, because majority of us are realtors and we do live by our code of ethics say that we will be ethical, that we will tell the truth, and that we will treat all parties fairly. Consequently, we have to believe that when they tell us they presented our offer, that it was presented. Okay? Now, if your offer is rejected, one thing I would counsel listing agents to do is mark on there rejected and have the seller initial or sign it. That way you can send page 1 back and you know for sure that your offer has been looked at. Understand too that it's not, and I'm going to talk about this in the presentation, it's not always the one with the highest money wins. There are lots of factors that involve which offer is being accepted. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Now, tips for presenting. How do you present multiple offers? Because honestly, what happens? The seller automatically, if you call and say, hey, I have an offer, yay, we have an offer, I'm going to come meet you at such and such time. What does the seller ask first? That's right. How much is it? But that's not always the big end all. You know, how much the offer is really has nothing to do with whether or not the seller wants to accept it. It's always the net. So it's how much are you going to walk off with? And what kind of terms? When is it going to close? What type of loan? So there are lots of factors that play into the acceptance of an offer. So here's how I would suggest you offer.
Let's get this other question real quick so we can finish up with this. It says, can we ask the listing agent to show proof of presentation of our offer?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And again, like I said, if it was rejected, what I would do is you know, talk to each other. Talk to each other. If you have a listing agent and the listing agent goes, I have multiple offers on this property and I'm going to be presenting to the seller at 5 o'clock on Friday. Go, great. I appreciate that. I have sent in our highest and best, and would you please do me this favor? I would like, if we are not accepted, please mark rejected and have your seller sign it and send me the first page back, just so that I can let the buyer know that you did in fact present. And I'm sure the listing agent is going to go, not a problem. So again, let's talk to each other and get that expectation level of what you would like to see someone do for you. I don't think that that's unrealistic to ask that. Okay?
And you have one more. Do we need to define a date when the offers will be shown to the seller?
If there is extenuating circumstances, for example, my seller is out of town and won't be back until Friday at 5 o'clock, yes, you need to address that. As far as proof of the date for presented offer, I would just write the date on there that you are talking to them. I hope that answered your question. Okay. All right, so we're going to go over how to present this, and then I'm going to see a lot of questions coming up, and I will answer every one of your questions. Fear not. Okay, so tips for presenting. Here's what I would suggest you do. Put each offer in either a separate folder or an envelope. Write the terms on the front. The net dollar, not the offer price, but what the seller is going to walk away with, and you should be able to get this figure from your net sheet. So this is going to be where you subtract commissions, title policy, any seller help, taxes, etc. So you're going to take all the closing costs from that, and then this is the net to the seller. You're going to put the date of the closing, the type of the financing, and the possession time. Okay? You're going to put these on envelopes, and you're going to put them in front of the seller and go, based on this information, which one would you like to look at first? And you should always, always do a net sheet. If you don't know how to do a net sheet, then you need to get with either your broker, title company, or a peer. Learn how to do a net sheet. That is key. That is key. So based on this information, which one do you think the seller would look at first? Well, of course, probably the most money. But again, it may not be the same terms that he wants. So understand that the seller can choose to go over all the details of the offer.
And Lori, we have a question here that's real good on this. It says, I see the wisdom of the envelope approach, but these days I think most of us are presenting offers electronically. Any suggestions for that?
Absolutely. When you present electronically, what you can do is you can send the seller an email and just put on there, here are 3 offers that I have. Here's the basics of them. Which one do you want to see first? Email back and forth. If he wants to see this one, then present electronically that one. And then present electronically the second and the third. Again, the key is you must present all offers. So make sure that you present them all, but you let them, you let him choose. Now, another thing you can do is an Excel sheet. You can do a spreadsheet, which for electronic life, that would be awesome, because then you have the numbers right there and he can just look at them. So Excel sheet, spreadsheet, great for electronic presenting. The key is really just to let them understand, let the seller understand, here's what we're looking at. Here are the offers as they stand. Which one do you like better? He may not like any of them. He may like one. He may counter, and should he counter, then here we go. He can counter back. And here's another form that we use, and I don't think many people are using this, and I know a lot of people are like, really, in a multiple offer situation you would use this, but it's up to you. One thing about this seller invitation to submit a new offer that I love is the fact that it tells you exactly what the seller's looking for. It's basically a laundry list. We haven't accepted your offer, but we'd look favorably if you would, and it just lists things that you can put down. And the key thing to remember is this protects your seller. It is not a counter. I repeat, it is not a counter. This does not bind them. They can still look at other offers. It is not a counter at all. It is not binding.
We have a couple more. One of them being, they want to, how can they ensure that they get a second chance to counter?
That's a great question too. So you better make your offer really good the first time. This world right now, you need to tell your buyers, look, this is not the time for you to falter. This is not the time for you to think, I'm going to try to get a deal, because you are not going to get a deal in this market. It's just not going to happen. You are going to need to bid well, and you're going to need to present well. And you might use a cover letter. That's another good thing. Use a cover letter. Explain this about the family. Our family loves your house. This is why we are making this offer. Da-da-da-da-da. So that's always helpful as well. Anything that you can do to give an edge over another offer is going to make you more favorable to the seller.
And we have one more here. It says, Can a seller disqualify any offer before seeing it? For example, the seller states, show me only offers that net me greater than X, and any offer that net below X, I don't want to see.
Okay, that's a great question. Now, our obligation is to present all offers to the seller. However, our principal, the seller, has instructed us to do something. So again, get that in writing, that the seller has instructed you not to accept offers below such and such. As long as you have that in writing, and that gives you authority to convey that to someone, now you need to back that up and back into it through a net sheet and give a price, not a net to the seller. But you would say, for example, if the seller wanted to net X, you would back into that, add all the closing costs, and say, okay, we need a sale price of no less than X. So that sale price could be, conveyed. And again, get it in writing.
And there's someone asking, is there a form?
Yes, there is that seller instruction it was back in the beginning of the presentation. I believe it's a 1910. So it's a TAR 1910. It gives you the opportunity seller gives you the right to convey information either in writing or advertising or to tell. So again, that's the best place to use that. The key is just get everything in writing. If your seller instructs you to do something, get that in writing. Get that in writing. Have a paper trail, because that's going to help you in the long run. Great questions, y'all. Okay, another form that people use is the highest and best. Okay, we see this a lot with REO properties in the past, and we are starting to see this a lot with actually owner properties. Now, just to let you know, that can be a double-edged sword. You might send highest and best, and you may have some buyers that decide to walk because they're tired of getting into bidding wars. They've lost enough properties. And rather than do that, they would just rather walk away and get another property. So be sure to explain the pros and cons of that tactic to your seller should you request the highest and best. And buyer's agents, you need to counsel your clients make the highest and best, especially if we're going to be in a multiple offer situation. Right, and you don't have to ask for a highest and best too. That's not required. Now, let's talk a little bit about etiquette with peers. When you talk to one another, please be kind to one another, okay? One thing that we need to understand is that in multiple offer situations, there's a lot of miscommunication, there's a lot of preconceived ideas, there's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of issues going on amongst ourselves that really we shouldn't have going on if we would just talk to one another, okay? The thing is that, when you get an offer, thank them. Treat them respectfully, thank them, regardless of what the offer is. Get back to them in a timely fashion. Understand that you're following the wishes of your client. So if your client tells you to do something, you need to let them know, my client has instructed me to do this.
Lori, we have a question kind of going back to what we were talking about a minute ago. It says they're questioning that you don't have to ask for highest and best.
That's correct. You don't have to ask for that. You can just tell someone you're in a multiple offer situation. When someone tells you you're in a multiple offer situation, your mind should automatically think, okay, you better make the best offer you can make because we are going to be up against several other offers. So I would counsel you, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, to make the best offer you can possibly make.
And just to clarify again, you're saying that the seller doesn't even have to let anybody know they're in a multiple offer situation?
Well, yes and no. If your seller instructs you that I don't want to disclose that we're in a multiple offer situation, then you don't have to disclose that you're in a multiple offer situation. Okay? Your seller can instruct you, I don't want to do it. I don't want anybody to know. So if that's the case, again, get that in writing and then make sure that you present all offers, but you don't necessarily have to tell someone that you are in a multiple offer situation.
But if you tell one person,
you have to tell all. If you tell one, tell all. Okay, that's the key. Tell one, tell all.
And we have one more. When seller agent says highest and best, does it mean we have no other chance to counter offer if we know the seller is looking at multiple offers?
Okay. When you get, if a listing agent tells you, hey, we're asking for highest and best by 5 o'clock on Friday, the 20th, then that's when you go back to your client and you tell your client, I want to let you know we are in a multiple offer situation. The seller is asking for the highest and best offer, and we have until 5 o'clock tomorrow to get it in. My question to you is, do you want to amend your offer? Do you want to change your offer in any way? Do you want to add more option money? Do you want to add more earnest money? Do you want to close sooner? Do you want to cut down on seller contrib? Do you want to do anything different in this offer that we need to change now and then rescind it? Okay. That's the opportunity that you have.
And we have a couple more, Lori. If we know the seller is contemplating multiple offers and no result is out yet, can we just present a new higher offer before the final result is out?
Yes. Yes. You can present an offer as long as you know you're presenting it in the time frame that the listing agent has required. Now, if it's 6 o'clock on Friday and the listing agent has already put forth some opportunity, you can still send it in, but there's no obligation for her to present with that bunch that she's presenting to, if that makes sense. Now, if he hasn't accepted it, she gets it, and he wants to look at that before he accepts the others, understand he has the right to do that. And so that pool of potential buyers for that 5 o'clock deadline may go by the wayside to make room for the 6 o'clock one.
Okay, here we have another one. What if the seller instructs me to tell one prospective buyer something but not to convey that info to another buyer? In other words, the seller instructs me not to tell all.
That is a really good question. That is a really good question. We have a duty to our peers for fairness and honesty. We have a duty to our seller for confidentiality. In that aspect, I think I would let the seller know, look, I appreciate where you're coming from, but I want you to understand this is how we play. And we have to play fairly. So if we tell one, we should really tell the other. Again, you're going to have to do what your client wants you to do, but you have to look at the Code of Ethics. What does Code of Ethics say? So again, it's just like if your client were to say, I want you to show this house to one person but not to another. You have to instruct your client, you can't do that, and here's why. So it's kind of the same thing.
Okay, and then we have one other, just a suggestion. It says the term rejected is too authoritative, and they're just recommending that instead of having your seller write rejected across an offer, you might want to have the right decline, and just whatever feels most comfortable, I guess.
Absolutely, that's a great suggestion, and I appreciate that. We're so used to writing rejected, that's old school, rejected. Declined is a much better way to put it, so I will take that into account. So next time, write declined, and then just have your seller sign it. Thank you for that suggestion.
And one more here, if the house doesn't appraise, they want to know, does the seller have to reduce the price?
The seller does not have to reduce the price unless it's an FHA. Okay, if it's FHA, they're not supposed to move forward. They're supposed to reduce the price. However, the buyer still can pay the difference. So here's the deal. The seller never has to do anything. Okay, the seller will at that point back out. So you have to counsel counsel your client, counsel them and let them know if for any reason this house does not appraise, here's what can happen. They may ask you to come down. Are you willing to do that? Number one. Or, they may be able to pay the difference, or they may back out and we're back to square one. So those are the three options that you have. So again, folks, educating your client, I can't stress that enough. Educate your client. Give that expectation of what's going to happen. Here's scenarios.
And they're also asking, at what stage would you cancel that if they are not able to proceed because of the appraisal? At what stage would you say that?
Okay, great question. So you're saying, when would you cancel? Okay, so typically we have a contract, we have the option period. Now, most likely the appraisal is not going to be done during the option period. However, you do have most of the time the third-party financing addendum. Now, if for any reason you are trying, and this brings me to another opportunity too. If for any reason you are trying to make your offer look more lucrative than another, understand if you start removing some of these contingency outs for your buyer, for example, let's say you didn't have that checked for the third party that you're willing to move forward, that would not be an out for you. However, if you have the third party and it's within that time frame, you could move out and terminate during that for the third party.
Okay, we have a couple more on the, I think there's a little misunderstanding on this one. It says, so please confirm, on an FHA, the seller has to lower the price if it does not appraise.
According to the terms of the third-party financing addendum, on the FHA portion, it says the house should appraise for the offerance price. If not, the buyer can back out and receive all their earnest money, okay? Or the seller can lower the price, or the buyer can pay the difference, okay? That's the big thing with FHA. But on that too, on that same note, if you have removed that third-party financing condition, then you don't have the option to back out during that time frame. Another thing too is if for any reason the house does not appraise on paragraph 4 on page 1 of the contract, if it talks about the house must appraise, remember we had these two opportunities for financing. We have one for the buyer's creditworthiness, which is that third party. Then we have one for the house itself passing the investor's requirements, and part of that is appraisal. So if you have a minimum down payment and the appraisal does not come back, then yes, that could be an option for you to back out. However, if your buyer's putting much dollar down, then that may or may not be an opportunity for him to back out.
And we just have a couple more on this, Lori, and I know you need to move along, but it says on FHA, would the lender allow the buyer to pay the difference if it does not appraise?
Yes, they would allow that.
And next, in a situation where the buyers overbid each other hoping to get the house, if the appraisal does not come in at the sales price and is not an FHA, does the buyer have to pay what he offered?
If the house does not appraise and you do not have a opportunity to back out, then he could back out, but he may not get his earnest money. It depends on how the contract is crafted.
Okay, and then one more from a seller's perspective. How do you write in that the buyer must come up with the difference above the appraised value?
Okay, let's not practice law without a license, because when we start writing things in special provisions, we really open ourselves up to litigation. So if you are going to do that, and I don't know that you can do that, you need to talk to an attorney and have an attorney write verbiage for you in that special provision. Quite honestly, we can't hold a third party, and for example, a lender, we cannot hold a lender accountable to the terms of the contract because they're not a party to the contract. So I don't know that that would even be something you could force.
And let's get one more here, and then we will move on. It says, is there a way to make sure a buyer cannot back out after they've offered a higher than list price?
No.
No. And then
there's really not.
And
there's really not.
Someone else made the comment, sounds like we need a webinar on appraisals.
Yeah,
and I think
it does.
That is correct. So we'll let you move on, and we'll get to the rest of the questions as we can.
It does. Now, I see a couple of other questions up here I want to look at real quick. Okay, can the buyer write in the offer, buyer will pay X amount if it does not appraise, not holding the lender but the buyer responsible? Again, anytime you start writing anything in special provisions, you need to have an attorney draft that verbiage. Do not try to do that yourself, because then you are practicing law without a license. Now, that brings us to another trend that is frowned upon by TREC and TAR. There was an article in TAR about escalation clauses. So understand that escalation clauses are not allowed.
And Laura, you may want to explain to them exactly what an
escalation clause is where you put in special provisions. My buyer will pay, for example, $1,000 over highest offer. Okay, so basically you're saying, I don't care what you get, my buyer's willing to pay $1,000 over whatever the highest offer was you got, which really offers up a lot of issues. And so when TAR was contacted, when TREC was contacted, escalation clauses are used in other states, but when they're used here in Texas, they're not allowed. They are frowned upon, and you are not supposed to do that. That is practicing law without a license, and you will get in trouble for that. So just to let you know, don't do an escalation clause. There are other ways to craft your offer.
Okay, and I think we can move on, and we'll hit these if we can at the end.
Again, like I said, etiquette with peers. Be sure that you treat all others respectfully. Follow the wishes of your client. Treat all parties fairly. If you tell one, you got to tell them all. Make sure you give everyone a chance. Make the playing field level. Be sure to communicate a thank you for your offer regardless of what it is. Share the decision in a timely fashion. Okay.
You know, here's one, going back to the escalation clause. How do you handle an offer coming in if you're representing the seller when there is an escalation clause?
That's a good question. I would talk to your broker and find out how your broker wants to handle it. I do know that there was an article in Texas Realtor, and you can go to the TAR site and read that article as well, that they do not want us to use escalation clauses. So I would check with your broker and find out how your broker wants to handle it. When you look at multiple offers, understand there are a lot of reasons that one offer is accepted over another one, and it's not always the money. It's not always the money. Remember, the best way to handle an unacceptable offer would be that TAR 1926, where you suggest they resubmit, because the seller is free to accept any offers. And when you scratch out our offers and counter back and forth and scratch out and do all this stuff, there can be a lot of unsurety as far as what the actual term of the contract was. Plus, someone might get their feelings hurt if the seller accepts another offer while you're in the midst of scratching and initialing, because he certainly can. So just to keep feelings in check, I think that's the best way to handle that. Okay? Remember the goal for sellers. It's going to be getting the most money in their pocket, the best terms and possession time frames. For buyers, it's going to be getting the right house, paying a good price, not getting a steal of a deal, and getting the terms that they want in their time frame. Okay?
And we have more questions. I know we're probably at a point now we can answer these until the end if we can. Okay, this is going back to the appraisal issue, I believe. It says, but since it's written in the contract, not as an option, you can't nullify that a house has to meet the lender's requirements. So you cannot change the promulgated parts of the contract, and then question marks.
Correct. In paragraph, if you're referring to paragraph 4, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to or not. I'm a little lost as far as what part you're talking about. But if you're talking about paragraph 4, that is in the contract. It is promulgated. And thank you. And yes, that says that the lender, it must meet the lender's requirements, notwithstanding the appraisal, the lender required repairs, insurance, etc. So again, a lot of times, if the appraisal is an issue, that could be part of it. And as you know, you have until closing to terminate that contract. So just be aware, these are some open-ended portions of the contract that you need to make sure that you shore up.
And this same person is saying they've seen brokers make requirements to change that paragraph.
Well, again, be careful what you're changing, because we are fill-in-the-blank agents. We are not allowed to change the contract. Our principals can write what they want, but understand, if you're making any changes to that contract, you could be practicing law without a license. Make sure that a lawyer is taking care of that, or that is something that principals have instructed you to do.
And here we go. Here's another one that actually asks that question. It says, if instructed to do so by the seller, can we cross out the promulgated language in paragraph 4, but not author any new language?
That is a great question. And what I have been taught and what I learned in real estate school is that principals can change the contract. Now, that being said, you have to understand that if your principal does change the contract, should it go to court, how is that contract going to be received? That would be my question. If your principal is thinking of changing something before you just go ahead and tell them, oh yeah, you don't like that, mark it out, I would really have them consult an attorney, because there could be some things that we think, oh yeah, that's black and white, and it may not be at all what we had thought it would be. So again, get an attorney.
Okay, here are a couple more. This one was a while back. I'm not exactly sure which part they were talking about, but it says, can you apply this to lease applications?
Yes. In other words, you can offer above, like for example, if you are trying to get a lease property and the lease is $1,000 a month and you want to try to get that lease, you could offer over and above whatever the lease is going for. Yes, you certainly could.
Okay, another one. As a buyer's agent, how can we help our client not to overbid?
Great question. The key is, again, it's going to be education. You are the expert. You know what houses are going for, okay? And so the key is make sure that you do that comparative market analysis for them. Have them sign it so that they know this is basically what the market is saying the values of these homes are. If you want to overbid, that's fine, because we are seeing property values creep up because we are having multiple offers. And listing agents, if you use multiple offers and you get a low appraisal, before you get a low appraisal, what I would counsel you to do is take those multiple offers, page 1, and send them all to the appraiser in a packet and say, I'm getting offers over and above. So there is a reason that we are asking for more in the appraisal. Give them that paperwork to back it up.
Hey, Lori, here's another one. Going back to something you commented on a minute ago, are you saying that if we're in the middle of a countering back and forth, that the seller can accept another offer and walk away from the one they're countering at that
Absolutely, because you are just countering. You do not have a contract. At that point, you simply have an offer. And that's where we run into problems. That's why it's so good to use that form, because I am working with you. I have the buyer, you have the seller. We are heated counter back and forth. We're marking things out, and we feel there is intent. I, as the buyer's agent, feel that your seller intends on letting my buyer purchase this property. In the meantime, a third agent brings an offer and the seller accepts it. How do you think I feel? I am livid, but the seller has the right to look at all offers until he signs off and executes one. And you and I have been in heated conversation, but we do not have an executed contract. So again, you need to counsel your clients and counsel each other. Understand that you don't have anything until the seller is signed and executed.
Okay, we have another one. How soon do I have to respond to a buyer's agent if I receive multiple offers, since I have to verify the mortgage issues first?
You need to respond about if you're allowed to respond about multiple offers, you need to let them know immediately. I have multiple offer situations. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. You still can take the time to check and see if they are actually pre-qualified, but you need to respond to them very quickly and let them know they're in a multiple offer situation.
We have another one. When making an offer, can we write that we'd like the opportunity for a counter offer?
Yeah, I would put that in a cover letter and say, we are open to a counter. Please let us know if this offer is not suitable. We would love the opportunity to bring you another one. Understand that may happen, it may not. You've got 5 offers on the table. You've got one that says, we'll come up if we have to. And you've got other ones that are like, vying for that opportunity. Understand that may not get you a counter, but you could certainly ask for it.
Okay, how long can a seller hold on to year 1 offer before answering if he's waiting around? I think they're asking about shopping for offers.
That's great. That's a great question. And the answer is there is no time limit on the seller. The seller can do whatever he wants. He can choose not to respond at all. So you, as the listing agent, you kind of have to counsel your seller, hey, look, you've got this other offer. What do you want to do? You tell me what you want to do, because if you're not going to move on this, we need to move on because they need to find a house.
Okay. We have a couple of more before we're going to have to close.
Okay.
Please clarify, if a buyer offers more than list price, when do they risk losing their earnest money if the property does not appraise?
Okay, that's a great question. They may or may not lose their earnest money depending on what the differential was. For example, you have someone, $200,000 home. You have one person that's putting 5% down. You have another person that's putting 30% down. Okay? The property comes back and appraises. If the person put 30% down, would the bank balk at the appraisal if it was low? Probably not. So that would not necessarily give them an opportunity to back. However, the person putting 5% down comes back, the appraisal is low, guess what? That would give them a chance to balk, and so consequently they may go ahead and terminate and get their earnest money back.
Okay, and we have one more question. This one just asks, if they are presenting an offer with a cover letter, how can they be sure that that letter is presented to the seller?
When you bundle everything, bundle it all in one PDF.
Okay.
When you send it on. So I have one more page. So in closing, just to let you know, be a professional, keep your emotions out of it. Remember, it's all about them. Be glad to have this problem because folks, it won't be here forever. Protect your client, have fun, happy selling, and thank you for sharing your day with me today.